Ich weiß nicht, wenn ich jetzt sage T.VDB, ob jetzt bei euch es im Ohr schon klingelt. Er ist das künstlerische Modestudio. Tom van der Borght, das vom belgischen multidisziplinären Modekünstler Tom van der Borght eben gegründet wurde. Und das finde ich sehr interessant. Er konzentriert sich mit seinem Label, wie er selber sagt, auf den Menschen und nicht auf das Geschlecht. Dann nämlich der Kern von T.VDB mit einer binären Definition, mit einer Beschreibung oder einem Titel oder so, eigentlich letztlich nur schwer zu greifen ist. Und interessanterweise hat er das schon immer getan, lange bevor das Thema Geschlecht, Binarität etc. medial so populär geworden ist. Was tut er? Er ist bunt, er ist total detailverliebt, er liebt es, mit recycelten Materialien zu arbeiten. Das sind alte Seile, es ist Plastik. Er schafft unglaublich fantastische Figuren in einer Eigenheit, wie wir sie, glaube ich, sonst noch nie gesehen haben. Und interessanterweise knüpft er dann aber vielleicht fast an eine Art Kleidung eines futuristischen Stamms unser aller Zukünfte. Und jetzt spricht er über seine jüngste Auszeichnung mit dem renommierten Hyères Preis. Den hat er während der Pandemie bekommen. Er gibt uns Einblick in sein kreatives Schaffen und seine Key-Kollektion Seven Ways to T.VDB, die ihn sehr stark repräsentiert. Und im Zentrum steht dabei sein multidisziplinärer und unkonventioneller Ansatz. Das Interessante ist nämlich, er schafft nicht nur Mode, sondern er schafft auch Bücher, Kurzanimationen und er arbeitet weniger letztlich als Designer, sondern als Künstler, wobei die Mode seine Ausdrucksform ist.
Hello. Welcome everybody. Many greets from Belgium. I would like to start with a short keynote presentation that I prepared so I can introduce you a bit into my work and into my universe. So I will switch the screen quickly. There we go. Okay, and I'm gonna play it. So as was stated really good in the introduction, my name is Tom van der Borght. And if you take the first letters of my name, you get this short acronym T.VDB, which I find an interesting way to talk about myself or to refer to myself. So I want to welcome you to my creative universe that is full of color and full of details. And I think if I have to introduce myself or say what it is, what I exactly do, then I have to refer to my own mother. She is a sewing teacher, and when I grow up, she taught me actually already the fashion for passion. And now always when she meets people and people ask her, how is Tom doing? How is he in his life with his fashion design? Then my mother, she always answers, yeah, but Tom, he's not really a fashion designer. He's more like an artist who expresses himself through clothes. So I think that defines me quite well. I think you could really ask this question, am I a fashion designer or an artist? And I feel that it's much more the outside world who wants to put me in a box. But for myself, I think the way how I work and how my way of researching translates into different creative shapes, this is a very natural or organic thing for myself. My work talks a lot about non-normativity, so about this concept of thinking outside of conventional boxes. This can talk about gender or about age or about ability or about body size. And I think it really comes from a radical choice, not only in aesthetics, but maybe also a radical choice in messaging. I think with my work, I really want to fight against this idea of conformism or fighting against the idea of fitting in one box. And my work borders between arts, fashion, and performance. I have a background in fashion design, but then quite recently I obtained an extra degree in performance arts, where I try to give a reflection on the performative side of fashion and the performative side of a runway. But I will show a bit more about that a bit later in the presentation. So for my collection, 7 Ways to be T.VDB, I actually got inspiration from a more difficult time in my life. And I think we all have this kind of moments. And this gave me the idea to create a kind of self-survival kit where I looked to different stages in my life, and I developed a kind of visual survival kit. It's the images that you will see behind my head hanging later when you will see my face again. And this collection really talks about overcoming difficulties, overcoming this idea of fitting into boxes, and maybe really fighting for the right to exist. And I used the idea of an extreme self-portrait. So it really talks about me, and I used my own face on a lot of places in the collection. But I only did this because this was the way for me to talk about larger topics like not normativity and collectivity, which we need so much now. So in that side, I just used myself as a tool, and it's not really about me. So if I have to describe my own superpower, creativity, I think it starts with the artistic research that I do. So mostly I first create books, and I like a lot to make books in existing books because there is already a reality there, and there's a reality that you can change or imagine differently. Then in the research process, books translate into stop motion videos. In the research, which is very visual, also artworks emerge. Those artworks can turn into prints or can turn into images that will become handwork. So I think fashion is one of the elements in this process. But I think a lot of the pieces or the things that I make, you could also see them as a kind of objects or maybe installations on a body. And there is always the layer of performance, which I will talk about a bit later. I think what also is very typical in my work is the fact that I'm looking for a new definition of luxury. And next to that, that I want to portray a clear vision about sustainability and social awareness. For example, the piece that you see on the screen now, it was developed from like a new kind of fake fur fiber that is made or based out of corn. So that's one way how something graphical can turn into a fashion piece, can turn into something with a sustainable point of view. So here you see some imagery from me working in my studio. So centrally you see drawings that I first make. Sometimes I draw before I design. Other times it's more the material that attracts me. You see on one side of the screen you see an example of a graphic that has been turned into full embroidery with recycled small glass pearls. And the messy corner. I think it's maybe a more personal note. I think that's important in my process. I think I'm always a bit messy in my head, or I have a lot of ideas at the same time. And I think the aesthetic and the choices that I make really come from maybe a bit this chaotic way of thinking, which is not linear or straightforward, but more complex or a complexity of thinking. So in my artistic approach, I think what is very important is the concept of more is more. I like to create images that really are built in an accumulation of information. I think there is a lot of power in overload. I think we live in such a complex world at this time that we perceive a lot of information at the same time. And I think this was sometimes my biggest issue in classic art school where you are really taught to edit and to leave things out and to go to the essence. And I think I developed a kind of style or approach where it's more about anti-editing and where I kind of like to add a lot of information layer on layer on top of each other, so you get a kind of diffuse image. And I compare it with this way of thinking or this way of editing. I compare it with how a coral reef in the ocean is structured. It's like a myriad of choices. You can go left and right, and it's not a straightforward or a linear way of thinking, or not an approach where you have the risk to fall into pre-made boxes, maybe. So that's a little bit how I try to work. So here you also see an image where there's more focus on accessories that I develop, accessories that as well can be objects, and that really try to give a new definition to this concept that to this concept of a bag or the concept of a shoe. And I like this approach or this way of working. So I think my work talks a lot about this tension between luxury and sustainability. This means a lot in my work that I want to work with materials that are not really normative for fashion, or materials that you wouldn't expect in a fashion collection, or materials that are rejected or that people don't really immediately classify as beautiful. So, for example, the look you see here, it's developed from a 3D knit that was developed to make car seating. It was an overstock from a small company, and I got some meters. Then the assembly of the piece is done with recycled plastic cable ties, which gives like a kind of an alternative to classic stitching. And then all the embroidery is also like repurposed, recycled wools. So this is a good illustration, I think, from this idea of accumulation, from this idea that you can find also luxury outside of the classical. It doesn't have to be leather or gold or classic materials. So then we go a little bit more into the performative side and the way how I do my presentation. So this is an image of my last show that I presented at Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week in Berlin. It was a collaboration with choreographer Blanca Lee, and I really wanted to portray the image of a hopeful parade or a kind of procession where really the borders of fashion, art, performance dissolve in a way. So talking a bit more about my approach to 3 ways of sustainability, I think what I want to do is to marry past, present, and future. And what I mean with this is that in the first place, and this is maybe something more of the present, it's the idea of recycling, reusing, repurposing material. Like in the image that you see there, it's a lot of overstock stencils that are sold in like a Christmas store. They were going to be out of stock, so I laid my hands on it, and it's really this idea of repurposing them into something new. I think a second element that or approach that I do to reach sustainability is really the idea of innovation. Like the example that I gave of the biological fake furs that I use, it's a good example of how we can also look to the future with innovation. And then on the third level, there is this concept of craftsmanship and handwork. It's maybe something more from the past, something that I want to celebrate again. And I think it's really important in my work that I choose consciously for limited production, unique pieces with a social awareness and with local production. So yeah, this is another image of the collections. where you see it's like a feast of handwork details, like it's the same look on the right, and on the left you see a jacquard that was developed from overstock yarns, and then the way how the pieces connect together is a macrame technique in recycled climbing fur, climbing ropes, excuse me. So to finish with it all, I think this is one of the most iconic images of my last collection. It's a model carried by copies of myself or people with my face. And I think this is really this idea of giving a performative definition of fashion. I think in this way, you really tell something about tell something about a story, and this is really the concept of fashion being an embodied practice, which I find a very important thing. So I think this is the main message that I want to bring. Tell a story, tell also your own story, and yeah, that's maybe my biggest superpower. Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna stop screen sharing, and there I am. So yeah, that was my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it and you liked it.
So much. Unfortunately, I can't see our public. I'm super sure that they are amazed. Maybe I start with a rather dull question. I would really like to know, and first I want to embrace our audience to put questions on Slido. If you have some more questions, there are some on the internet already, but you can put on Slido the hashtag ADC Festival, and I'm more than happy to draw your question into the talk. Tom, who is wearing your fashion?
Well, I think in my approach or in the way how I work, I never really start with the wish that a million people wear my things. I think it's not so much about who can wear it, but it's much more about this question of who dares to wear it. I think we all communicate with the clothes that we wear. We all tell a story with our physicality, and that is why for me it's really interesting to create something that really poses this question, like who is ready to go into a piece like that and defy maybe the boxes that are out there.
And I would like to know, because we talked about uncertainty and self-doubt, and so in the minutes before, in the last talk, and I would like to know from you, do you ever have, within this incredible enriching cosmos that you are creating, do you have these moments too? And where do they occur? These moments of doubt or anything, or maybe even emptiness of creativity, do you have it?
Yeah, of course. I'm not a robot. Yeah, I think they are even very essential in the process of creating. And I think for me, I think my work reads maybe as very chaotic, or there's always a lot of information, but I think it always starts from quite a simple concept, or quite a logical construction that is correct in my brain, at least. And I think that is a lot of time the moment where the emptiness occurs the most. I think it's always a search, especially within this concept of fashion. It's always searching a bit every collection again, like, okay, what is the main message that I want to tell? What is the main topic that I want to talk about? But I think once I have this concept, and a lot of time it's really like a word or a potential title, then that mostly makes my brain working.
Interesting. And coming back, there's a question concerning the sustainability aspect of your work. Somebody says, fast fashion consumption makes me really sad. How can designers help to make people use clothes longer? Not only yours, but any kind of clothes.
Yeah, I think we have to really redefine our relationship we have with the planet, of course, also the relationship we have with each other, but also the relationship we have to clothes. I think fast fashion made it very easy and very disposable, and I think there is not, with the consumer, there is not always an awareness about how many still like human work goes into even creating a simple t-shirt. So I think, especially with the work that I create, I really want to show that again. I want to show like handwork. I want to show an intensivity to it. And I think like that, I believe it's important to create pieces or to buy pieces that are kind of precious and that you want to have for a long time in your closet. That you maybe can play with yourself, or that you can take apart or rebuild. And I think this is also a bit the message what I personally want to tell, but maybe the main fashion, like the main message, it's like be a bit playful. You can play with the clothes that you have. If you don't think too much in boxes or think about restrictions, anything is possible.
There's another question popping up from the audience. Somebody says, the models, the versatile looks, and the entire presentation of your brand seems like a hymn to versatility. How do you live diversity in your own company?
Well, I think I have to talk about a bit my very personal story. I came from quite a small village in the east of Belgium, and being young, I grew up being gay, which in such a context already was like a first experience of being different, maybe than the normal or outside of the box. And then around my 24th age, I discovered that I was born with a muscle disease, so like a genetic muscle disease. So my muscles are slowly breaking down and degenerating. So that gave me like a second, a second perspective of like being having a different ability than able or like healthy people. And I think my creativity was maybe the way how I dealt with this maybe difficult sides of life. So if I have to talk about my company is super small. It means that it's me working there, and I do everything myself. I have a assistant who is helping me part-time, but he's also he's actually an actor, and he helps me in the studio part-time. So I think the way how I deal with this concept of the diversity is really to live my own perspective and talk really from my own experience. And I think in my presentations, it's natural for me to include a very diverse looking group. I think there is a lot of designers who want like models to be like very similar and become the vision they have. And I think I really like people with personality, with a body, with different gender, different perspective of life, different skin color, to really show this idea of a human tribe. I think connecting all humans. That's maybe my idealistic way of thinking in my brain.
With a look into the crystal ball, do you guess that this question around gender and diversity, etc., do you guess it's a wave and we will come back to like the tradition of genders that we had in the past? Or do you really think it opens up to a new world of diversity which we are all going to live in? What is your look into the crystal ball of the future?
Well, I think what definitely is interesting is that through digitalization mainly, I think there is already almost the possibility to choose your own person or avatar, maybe. So I think, or I find it really interesting that everything is going more outside of boxes. At the same time, I think our brain works still in a bit more binary way, and we, in order to understand things, we will always have to create kind of boxes. If we have no box at all, I think our brain also cannot function anymore. But I'm mostly interested, or I forecast that it will be kind of an ongoing conversation where we redefine these boxes. And I think it's mainly also the connotations that we have to these classic boxes of gender or color or sexuality, that I feel that will definitely change because of the things that is happening in these times.
I have a last question, but I want to share the appreciation on social media. Somebody says to you, this is so cool, good ideas about new luxury and the value of things. And talking about the value of things, we now have this initiative, the New European Bauhaus, that tries to embrace the modernity of Bauhaus at its time 100 years ago and bring it to a new sustainable level of the Green Deal, which we are all trying to foster in Europe, and really pulling the creatives in their responsibility into the game and say, you are part of the Green Deal. So what do you think, and this is really my last question, talking about the superpower creativity, what can we as a collective of creatives do to really foster sustainability, to really reach this common goal?
I think as you saw in my presentation, I think my own choices about sustainability is the fact that I try to have like diverse approaches. I don't feel like a specialist in one field, and also maybe I feel too human to think that I can solve everything by myself. But I think by having different approaches and gaining more consciousness by yourself, you can adapt small things and take small steps. And I think on a personal level, I think really my choice to do something in a limited way, to really use limitation as a starting point for creativity. I think that's really a very interesting approach, and something that really connects to this topic, and really maybe is also something more simple to apply for anybody. And I think also this awareness by yourself that we all can still evolve or develop. I think I put energy to sustainable matters in my work and in my collections. At the same time, I'm also not perfect yet, or it's not finished yet. It's just by making this choice and trying to think in this direction, and take inspiration from different sources and different sides. It's something that everybody can do. And this is really this idea of collectivity, I think, that I believe in a tribe. Everybody has its function, everybody does its part, and that's what makes the collectivity run and go. So in my dream about this big human tribe, everybody at least tries, or everybody can choose their own connection to this topic, or their own maybe like first gate to enter in this way to deal with topics, and then I believe that the rest will follow from a conscious mind.
And it's so great. While you talk about tribes, I see these images behind you, these hand-drawn images, and I was thinking of the caves of Lascaux, like thousands of years ago, yeah, of this human tribal, and I just imagined a virtual conference, and everybody has drawings of him or herself in the background, and I just love this idea because I see it in your background. We have a very last question. Now the question is gone. There was a last question. It was about how long do you work, and this is really my final question. How long do you work approximately on a certain piece?
Yeah, that's...
Maybe it's ridiculous to ask, but is there an average time you could tell us?
No, it really depends one piece to another, of course. I think the most complex pieces, they can go easily over 150 hours, I think, where there is a lot of handwork involved. But a lot of times they also really, even the process of the pieces evolving, it's also not always a linear process. Sometimes I work on something for 2 days and then it stays one week on the side, and then I rework it, or and it's maybe really this approach of kind of remixing your own ideas. I was young in the 90s, so I was surrounded with a lot of DJs and a lot of remixes. So I love that idea of remixing your own ideas or remixing your own thoughts. So also that changes the concept of time a little bit.
Tom, thank you so much for your lifetime that you are sharing with us in this call. And I think it's hard to imagine sometimes how to stop, to say, now it's ready. Now this is it. So I really imagine how hard it is to stop.
Yeah, I think it's something I feel. I think there is one moment when I look at the thing that I do, and then I have like, okay, now that nothing can be added anymore. And I think that's the point where it's finished or it's ready to be born.
Thank you for your babies. Thank you very much, Tom, for sharing your creativity. All the best to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.